Okay, thank you very much, and thank you on behalf of the rest of the City Council on serving on the Homeless Advisory Board. I know that you have been doing that for some time and that you have spent many hours on that project, and we do appreciate your work in that area. Is there anything else you'd like to share at this time about the Homeless Advisory Board?
Tomorrow from 8 until noon, we have a homeless coordinator from Seattle. He's speaking. It's in coordination with the Sioux Falls Area Development Foundation and the Community Outreach Program, which is an organization of the community churches. And he's going to be talking about how we get the faith community more involved in using their missionary dollars more effectively to help working poor and homeless. And that's at the Multicultural Center from 8 until 1 o'clock. There's a lunch provided as well.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that's one of those meetings that a person could, go to and leave at their convenience. And so, again, thank you for that update on that important topic. Now we'll run through our committee reports, and we'll start with the Audit Committee. And Councilor Costello, could you provide a report for us?
No report really, but we will be meeting tomorrow at 4:30, so we should have a report for you next time we get together.
Okay, and thank you. And Fiscal Committee, could you report for us?
Next Monday at 5 o'clock, we will be discussing the alternative financing infrastructure proposal.
All right, okay. And Land Use, Councilor Jameson. Okay, and Public Services Committee, Councilor Brown.
We'll continue our daycare discussion on the second Monday, which is probably the Tuesday because of the President's Day holiday, immediately following this informational session.
I think actually the President's Weekend holiday is the next week, I think. But would you also want to just say a little bit if people out in the public had information or thoughts on the child care topic or whatever, that they could contact you?
Absolutely. They can email at vbrown@siouxfalls.org. They can also contact the 211 Helpline Center. Carol Muller will be back to visit with our group, and they sort of coordinate the registered daycares in the city. And Judy Boozman from the Health Department, any of those contacts will work.
Okay, and thank you. And again, we are just at the Public Services Committee level are just reviewing the current child care ordinance on the books and just starting that important discussion. And now we will have City Council open discussion. Would Councilor Litz?
Thank you, Councilor Knudsen. One thing came to my attention here. I know with Public Works lately, with the snow thing coming up, we've been watching the overtime, and it's very important that we do that. But something else came to my mind here this weekend. We've had a cycle of extreme cold and then a thaw, and what happens when you do that is water mains break. They seem to break at that point, and Public Works this morning, they started about 10 o'clock last night in my neighborhood working on a broken water main. They worked all night, and they got the thing fixed before morning when the load of water, the peak usage of water was going to occur. And, I just wanted to commend these people. And I went and talked to them about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they had a couple more that they were going to do. I asked them if they got to go home and go to bed afterwards, and they said no. So I just want to commend these guys for getting up at a time when the rest of us are sleeping and not even thinking about working and keeping this city going. So.
Yeah, and Councilor Litz, thank you so much. That is such an important reminder for all of us about our hardworking city staff that works tirelessly to improve our great city every day. So thank you so much for sharing that with the rest of us. Would there be any other topics under open discussion? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to our staff reports, and our Director of Finance, Mr. Rowenhorst, will provide a monthly financial update. And thank you for being with us, and his able assistant, very able assistant, Tom Huber, is with him to help out.
Now I'll have to give him a raise.
How much? Yeah, are you double his salary or just, how much?
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. Actually, we're going to give you a little bit more than just a monthly report. We're doing in our monthly report essentially the year end for the city. And I really don't want to apologize for not having stuff in front of you because there was a reason for that. We have, because of the way the books cut off this year, particularly with the salaries, we couldn't really start working on closing the books until the middle of January, and in about 2 weeks, Tom and his staff have been able to basically close down the books, and we think we have hard numbers. I will keep the caveat, though, it may change. Ide Bailey is working on them as we speak. They kind of threw Tom out of his office and they've taken it over. But we're reasonably comfortable that these are pretty sound numbers, and we think we have some pretty good news to share with you. This is primarily going to be a report on, as I said, on the year as a whole. The capture will not be completed for probably a month or two more from now yet. We'll actually have the CAFR done, and we'll have our hard numbers. The things that we want to review with you or take note of, particularly on pages 19 through 22. The first thing we want to talk about, though, is the general fund. We're going to talk about the general fund and the sales tax fund, or the second penny fund, because those are the two primary funds of that operate the city. And in the general fund, we want to talk about the revenue first, and I handed out, you have a hard copy of a reconciliation, and there's also one up on the screen. What we're doing is we wanted to show you how we came out in relation to the budget as a whole. Right now, assuming we find no further adjustments to the revenue, the general fund is going to be up by $4.7 million. That is coming from really unexpected activity and not regular budget activity. The most favorable variance in these revenues are the investment in our treasuries and U.S. agencies that we use for managing our money fund. Because of the way the market moved this year, we actually gained almost $2.3 million in additional revenue over what we had budgeted. We also had an unexpected amount of almost $1.1 million come in from the bank franchise tax. We have been informed by the Department of Revenue that that is a one-time event that will not be there in 2008. We also had a sales tax audit recovery of almost $550,000. And then miscellaneous other items for $781,000. So that's the $4.7 million or $4,695,000 additional revenues that we received that really weren't contemplated in the budget, and frankly, I don't think there's any way we could. We use averages of several years to figure out what we want to put into the budget, and we try and stay along those lines. And when events like the bank franchise tax come up, we would have no reason of knowing that. We don't know why it's there, and the Department of Revenue just told us that it will not be there next year. So I don't know what's going on with the bank franchise tax, but something has changed there dramatically. The revenue on the sales tax, well, let's see here. On the sales tax, our sales tax came in at 7.6%. If we average that out over the last 3 years, we'd be at 7.2%, and we have in our budget 7%. So we're right in where we should be with our sales tax. Let's look at the general fund expenditures now then and see what changed in those. The general fund balance is estimated it's going to come in, the general expenditures are going to come in about 4.8% better than the adjusted budget. And the things that are causing that, or primarily the cause for it, if you recall, there's grants and other adjustments for $1.2 million. If you're so interested, those are on page 7, 8, and 9 in your monthly financial report. And then we have put in a $2 million supplement for snow removal, adjusting the budget upwards by $3.1 million to almost $108 million. And then we had expenditures of $102 million, the actual expenditures. Then if you take out of that, that comes to your $5,181,000. If you take out of that the supplements, we came up with expended wage-adjusted funds of $2 million that we were over. That's about 1.9%. So And what caused that major expenditure improvement was in the health department. If we add that in there, another $572,000, we ended up 1.4, almost $1.5 million, or 1.4% under the budget. So when you take out these one-time items, I guess the point we really want to make is the departments did an excellent job of managing their individual budgets. And the items up here are unanticipated. We'd have no reason to consider these in a budget typically when you're putting it together, because you'd have no idea that it's going to be there. So the message is that the departments have not left a bunch of money laying on the table. They left $1.4 million out of $107 million. Like I say, 1.4%. If I could have always hit my budget that good, I would have been very happy. So the one-timers are the ones that are really helping us out this year, and they all went the right way, and they could just as easily go the wrong way next year, because we don't know what they are. We do know one thing about the revenue that was generated in the investments. That is a mark-to-market situation, and we will have to give that back in '08, most likely. But if the market changes a certain way, we could hold on to it. But it is a mark-to-market situation, and we hold to maturity. So when we hold to maturity, that's going to come back in and kind of eat into some of that, or it has the potential of doing that. Sales and use tax fund. We came up this year, looks like right now we're going to have about $7 million of unobligated fund balance, an unreserved fund balance. That's a little on the high side. We tend to run from $4 to $7 million. So we came in high this year, but the biggest issue was we had a number of projects that came in under budget, and they turned the money back into the fund. The health buildings probably wasn't a good example. There was about an $800,000 save against their budget, and that was part of what's turned back into this $7 million. That pretty much concludes my report. You've got, like I say, you've got pages 19 through 22 if you want to take a look at those. Well, one of the things I do want to point out is pages 20 and 21. We've been working on our program budgeting, and we do not report any of this during the year because we do not have good interim reporting. So this is the year-end numbers on the programs, and actually, again, the departments did a very good job. Probably the largest one that you would take note of is police in their community service department and patrol. And actually, what that was a flip-flop between two departments. Misclassification. It should have been budgeted differently than what it actually was. When you come down to the net on for instance, police, they left $755,000 on the table out of a $22.5 million budget. Again, not too bad job of budgeting. So if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Councilor Benega.
Gene, can you give me a little more information about the health premium rebate of $572,000 on the front page?
What those are, the health fund was building up balances beyond what we anticipated needing, so there were two holidays essentially that we took that were in the budget, and we did not assess those two holidays, so the employees and the city save that amount of that much revenue to themselves.
Okay.
We've been doing very good in our health department. The fund is very, very healthy, and this works out to be a good way of. It's kind of like a rebate on cars. We don't have to drop the premiums, but we can give them a couple of holidays a year, and that way we don't have to go back and raise premiums if something goes the other direction. We haven't had any catastrophic type events in that fund for a couple of years. If one hit, though, it could turn this around in a hurry. It would actually probably take more than one, but
I guess that was my question. Does the actuaries give us the ability to rebate that versus maintaining it in reserves?
that's all run by actuaries, yes.
Okay. So these are approved by them?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Costello?
Gene, on our 2008 budget, we budgeted 7% growth in sales tax, and we, in 2007, had a 7.6% actual. What was our budgeted for 2007?
7%.
7%. And then, could you maybe you don't have it, or maybe you could email it to us if you don't, but on the expenditures on the chart that you showed, you're showing a wage-adjusted budget. What was the unadjusted budget number? Because if I recall, that was the wage-adjusted work for the salary.
The unadjusted number was about 800,000. Am I right? now?
Less than that, right? 800,000.
No, 800, that was the adjustment. The unadjusted one, the unadjusted number that you're looking for, though, was about $800,000. We were going to run a deficit. When you put in the 1.6 million, that gets you the 2.4.
No, I'm talking on the expenditure side. You start off in your chart, your wage-adjusted budget of $104 million. What was the unadjusted number? Because if I remember right,
it'd be 1.6 million less than that. Yes.
Okay.
The adjustment was 1.6 million.
Okay. And that was because we didn't have the negotiations with the unions done at that time during the budgeting, and we didn't know what we were going to.
And the item, what was missing was the COLAs.
Right.
And that's what was the adjustment was.
Was it for all three of the unions? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, they were all three negotiating at the same time. They've got different contract terms now, different years now. They're not all at once, but.
Thank you.
Would there be any other questions for Director Willenhorst? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and for your work for us, and likewise, Mr. Huber. Okay, our next item on our agenda under staff report is the Director of Planning and Building Services, Mike Cooper, and Jeffrey Schmidt, Assistant Director, will visit with us about land use and development standards, and welcome both of you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Good afternoon. I am Mike Cooper, Director of Planning and Building Services. We wanted to quickly update you on a process that we're going to be starting this year involving a land use study. When we were approved for our 2008 operating budget by the City Council, there's a line item in our budget this year identified as a land use study, and it's a $50,000 appropriation. So we wanted to kind of brief the council today to talk to you about how we intend to implement that funding. And you have received a little bit of background information that I'll just kind of quickly go through. There's a couple things that we've discussed with you in the past. One is that our current zoning ordinance that we are using was adopted back in 1983. And although I think it's served the community very well over the years, with changes in land uses and changes in development standards, we've determined that there's a real need to do a comprehensive update of that zoning ordinance. And like a lot of things, I think we have the staff ability to do that, but unfortunately finding the time in our day-to-day activities becomes very challenging. So we've kind of always had to put that on hold because we were always focusing on the day-to-day tasks that continue to come up. But we still need to look at a comprehensive update of that ordinance. In addition to that, we need to update our 2015 plan. The 2015 plan was approved by the City Council in December of 1996, and it was updated by the City Council in January of 2003. We're coming up on a 5-year cycle that we typically would go in and do an update. In this case, there's been some significant changes that have happened since 2003, including the East Side Lift Station, as well as working with Public Works on access management standards. And so, again, I think there's a need for a more comprehensive update of our 2015 plan. And based on some preliminary calculations that Jeff Schmidt has done, when you look at the amount of land that we have the ability to sewer in the future right now, and look at the amount of land that we typically develop in a year, we're looking at probably amending our 2015 plan out to the year 2035. So those are two major tasks that we would like to get underway this year. And as kind of a kickoff to do that, we felt it was important to bring in some assistance through a consultant. We've gone through a request for proposal process, and we've selected a consultant based out of Omaha. Jeff is going to give you kind of a quick background of that firm and then talk in more specifics about the process that we intend to go through this year to accomplish this land development standards update, which will eventually help us not only amend our 2015 plan, but also work on our zoning ordinance. So I'll turn it over to Jeff Schmidt, Assistant Director.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Jeffrey Schmidt from the City of Sioux Falls Planning Office. We've selected RDG as our consultant, and RDG has two main offices, one out of Omaha and one out of Des Moines. And Marty Schukert is the principal of that firm out of Omaha, Nebraska. He was previously the planning director of Omaha, Nebraska, until he started his own firm. And then the assistant director out of Des Moines is his other planner in the Des Moines office. They also worked with us when they did their open space bike trail master planning process that we had in the City of Sioux Falls recently. They've worked with a significant number of firms, communities in South Dakota, including Yankton, Brookings, Mitchell, Rapid City, and they've also recently, which is one of the reasons we chose them, updated the Des Moines master plan, looking at their land uses and zoning, and we'd like them to kind of look at, from our size community, how we could move forward. Some of the real challenges, as Mike mentioned, is trying to make sure that we're staying abreast to the market and what the community wants. Some things based on the new access standards, we have larger intersections, so we're looking at some mixed uses. Along our regional arterial corridors, we may need to look at business parks and what business parks are. That's something that he would be proposing. We don't necessarily do a lot of industrial in Sioux Falls right now, so it may be an economic development. That's something he'd talk to the community about from a land use standpoint, as well as affordable housing with rising land costs and infill development. So quick and summary from a land use standpoint: mixed uses, business parks, economic development, and affordable housing. We are looking at this point, having our first public meeting on February 20th down at the Orpheum Theater, and that was first of many public meetings where, again, we'd have the consultant along with Sioux Falls Tomorrow facilitating these discussions. Staff would be just basically taking minutes and notes from the public, finding out what their wishes, needs are of the community, very similar to what the City Council is doing on their survey, finding out what the needs are of this community. We'll take those land use issues, continue to move them forward, and give a report back to you. In the end, after all the public meetings, it will probably be fall of 2008. Questions for staff?
Jeffrey, thank you, first of all. And has the time been set for the meeting on February 20th yet that we can put on our calendars?
No, it has not. We
Okay.
have just looked at that's available for the Orpheum Theater. Now we have to put some logistics together.
Okay. And Councilor Staggers.
Yes, you mentioned that we have to do these modifications and changes to stay abreast of the market. I was just wondering, is there going to be any attempt to maybe reduce some of the regulations that we have?
One of our big concerns is talking to the public to find out what the public's interest is.
Specifically, are we going to be trying to deal with trying to maybe reduce some regulation?
The real issue is if we can go out to the public and ask from the public standpoint what their direction is. If their direction is to change them, we would be looking to change them. Yes, sir.
I would just add to that, that as we work with the public and with the development community, I think we're going to be asking, are there things about our current development review process that you like or that you don't like? Can we streamline it? Can we speed it up? Can we improve on it? Do we have the right number of zoning districts? Do we have too many, not enough? So I think, yes, those kind of things we would certainly want to get input from the public and from the development community on.
Would there be any other questions for Mr. Cooper or Mr. Schmidt?
And we will certainly make the council integral part in this whole process as well.
As usual?
Yes.
Okay, thank you both very much. And moving on, we will have our an update, a regular update on the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System by the Executive Director Troy Larson. And again, just for our Granicus system and so forth, I'd just like to remind everyone when they come to the podium to please introduce themselves with titles and so forth.
Thank you, Chairperson Knutson and members of the council. I'm Troy Larson, the Executive Director of the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System, although I do catch myself still saying rural from time to time, so don't feel bad. A couple other people to introduce while these handouts are coming around. We have Chairman Red Arndt from Laverne, who's been here in the past. A couple of my staff members, Jim Owen is our water plant superintendent. Dan Zolkowski is our construction administrator, and then a couple of our attorneys from Davenport, Evans, Monty Walls, and Doug Hyack, in case there are any legal questions. We do not have any of our engineers here tonight, so hopefully there won't be too technical of questions. I'm going to provide an update to you tonight, and thank you for the opportunity. The last time I was here was in late August, and that seemed like a lifetime ago because a lot has changed in the last 4 months. If you go to the second page of your handout, the three main items I'm going to cover tonight, construction status, funding status, and then, of course, the water treatment plant. The next page, construction status. This is a picture of the construction going on south of Sioux Falls along 85th Street, which is part of what we call Segment 9, which is the emergency connection that we are building out of order for T and Harrisburg. So you may have seen some of that construction going on south of town. I have a couple more here. Are we short? Couple?
If I could share too, I just
The next page then is a construction progress map. The red area shows the construction that has been completed, which represents 65 miles of primarily 54-inch diameter pipe. Green area is roughly 14 miles that is still under construction. And you can see the area south of Sioux Falls that we are working on. And there are 3 projects that comprise that emergency connection for T and Harrisburg. Those 3 projects, the substantial completion deadline for all 3 is July 1st, 2008. So by July 1st is when we anticipate having the infrastructure in place for that emergency connection. Also, you'll note in Iowa, the emergency connection for Hull has been completed, and because it was completed right before winter, Hull did not have a need for water at that time, so that is scheduled to be operational on May 1st of this year. And I want to point out as I'm going through this, please interrupt me and ask questions. This is for you, so.
Well, Troy, I guess I'm wondering why Hall didn't need the water, because the water they have now is so bad.
Hull, their original water was so bad that they actually capped the wells. They are now getting water from a neighboring rural water system, Rock Valley Rural Water. But Rock Valley Rural Water has a number of agriculture users, and Hull is not always able to get enough water. And so they need the water, but the reason it's starting in May instead of, say, November is we're not going into a high water usage time. So May 1st is when those valves will be turned. But good question, though. Next page, I'm just going to flip through a couple pictures of the main trunk line. Here's I'm not sure how much that gentleman at the end of the pipe is actually directing it or just holding on for dear life. The next page shows the turnout at Beersford. The north-south is the main trunk line, and then on the right side of the page is the turnout that eventually will go to Beersford. And this also is a location for a future pump station, which is a purpose of one of those vaults. Next page, again, just picture of some of the construction going on in the main trunk line, the 54-inch pipeline. And I forgot to mention, we do have one segment that you saw on the progress map, one segment of the main trunk line left to bid. That's 11 miles, and the plan is to bid that this coming spring, April, to be more specific. Next picture shows some more of the construction in a more urban area south of Sioux Falls along 85th Street. Construction summary then. Again, we have 65 miles of primarily 54-inch pipeline that's been installed, with another 14 miles still under construction or contract. The Iowa emergency connection has been completed and will begin operation in May of 2008. And as I just mentioned, the last 11-mile segment of the main trunk line will be bid this spring. 7 wells have been drilled, and in addition, we have a bank stabilization project going on down by Vermilion, and hopefully you've had a chance to see some of the pictures that I've sent around with my weekly reports. It's a fascinating project down there. And as I mentioned, the emergency connection for T and Harrisburg will be completed. The substantial completion deadline is May 1st, 2008.
Councilor Costello?
Troy?
Yes.
The last 11-mile segment is going to get bid this spring. What will be the completion time of that?
That I don't know. I would anticipate it would probably be summer of 2009. I'm anticipating the engineers would have a little over a year for that to be completed, but don't hold me to that. But I would venture a guess the summer of 2009.
Thank you.
Any other questions about construction before we get into the funding part of the project? All right. Moving on, Lewis and Clark funding, just a recap of the last 3 years of federal funding. We received $17.5 million in 2006, $21 million in 2007, and just over $26 million in fiscal year 2008, which was a significant increase given the tight budgetary environment in Washington. So we were very pleased, even though it's not the $35 million we need to keep construction on schedule. We are certainly making steady progress. We are again requesting $35 million for fiscal year 2009. We hope that receiving $26.568 million last year, in 2008 to be exact. We hope receiving that will allow us to seek another increase this year. So we hope to capitalize on the good showing we had last year. 17 out of our 20 members have committed to prepaying their share of the project. State of Iowa and Minnesota are paid up. South Dakota to prepay its remaining share over the next 3 years, which is $19 million. We are in Governor Round's bill, omnibus water bill this session for $6.4 million. And the plan is to seek $6.3 million the next 2 years to make up that $19 million. The 3 other members of Lewis and Clark, which are Centerville, Lennox, and Parker, are smaller members, and they did not have the bonding capacity to prepay their share, so they're either accelerating payments or considering ways to do so. Before I get into the water treatment plant, any questions about funding? Moving on then to the water treatment plant. Next page is just a picture of a model of the plant. The next page, a quick recap. The $142 million bid was far more than, of course, we expected. However, our engineers believe it would have been the least expensive option in the long run and would have left the project $7 million under budget. However, accepting the bid was not an option simply because we didn't have the available funds. After extensive review, the decision has been made to build the water treatment plant in phases. Now, during the course of our extensive review, 7% of permanent savings have been identified from the rejected bid. And Lewis and Clark currently plans to defer 21% of the remaining costs until after 2012. So we're essentially taking a fairly large chunk of the project and waiting until after 2012 to construct that. Next page. Phase 1 will be bid this summer, and that includes the high service pumps, clear wells, and electrical building. No final decisions have been made on the number, scope, and timing of the remaining phases. However, we are working toward the goal to bid Phase 2 in 2009, with the remaining phases, however many of those may be, to be built after 2012. Phase 2 is important because once completed, it will allow Lewis and Clark to deliver treated water. Phasing of the water treatment plant will likely increase the overall cost of the project, and that's just common sense in terms of if you were building a house and you build it in phases, it's going to cost more in the long run than if you built it all at once. And again, unfortunately, that's not an option to us.
Complete your,
That, unfortunately, building it as one project is no longer an option, so we were looking at the phasing.
okay, on Phase 2, when we bid that in 2009, does that mean that the remaining phases we will have decided what that's going to be and the timing of those, as far as the final water treatment plant, what it's going to look like, what its capacity is going to be, what the features are going to be in it?
We know what the capacity will be. It's still going to be a 45 million gallon plant, and so that has not changed. You may have heard, Lewis and Clark's building a smaller plant. We're just building less of it now, but we will ultimately have a 45 million gallon plant. But to answer your question, by 2009, we should have a pretty good idea, but between 2009 and 2012, things could change. So I don't think we'll know definitively what Phase 3 is going to look like, or if there's a Phase 4, Phase 5. We'll have a pretty good idea, though.
And you said that Phase 2 was significant because that allows to pump untreated raw water?
No, treated water. Phase 2 would allow the delivery of treated water.
And what's the estimated time on that?
Which is, you mean of when to bid it or when to be
When to be
completed?
completed.
That segues into the next page, if I may.
Yep.
The next page, with phased approach, and I want to emphasize the prepayment by the members and continued federal funding. Lewis and Clark fully expects to deliver treated water by 2012 to Sioux Falls, T, Harrisburg, Minnehaha Community Water Corp., and Lincoln County Rural Water. Does that answer your question? Okay. And again, it's the phased approach plus continued federal funding plus the prepayment by the members that we've been talking about. Lewis and Clark currently has an estimated well capacity of 19 million gallons a day, which will more than meet the startup demand of the first 5 members mentioned above. As you may recall, Sioux Falls is deferring construction of the wells needed for its additional 17 million gallons a day. Sioux Falls' original capacity is 11 million gallons a day. Next page. The reserve, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Troy.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Sioux Falls is deferring construction of the wells needed for its...
The Sioux Falls, as you may recall, requests an additional 17 million gallons a day of capacity. We are building the pipeline and the water treatment plant infrastructure to handle that. But because Sioux Falls is not going to need 28 million gallons of water on day one, the city is deferring the construction of those wells that are needed to generate that capacity. Because the thought was, why build it now, the wells now, if you're not going to use them for maybe 20-some years?
Okay, maybe I misread this, but it's really Lewis and Clark that's deferring, huh? I mean...
No, this is part of that incremental expansion, so Sioux Falls is paying 100% of the cost for us to expand by that 17 million gallons.
Okay.
And so these wells that would be needed would be entirely Sioux Falls' to pay for. They will be built and operated by Lewis and Clark, but paid for by Sioux Falls revenue.
I've got it, thanks.
And Troy, that amount, whatever it is not part of our $70 million bond fund that we did?
Correct. And I believe at the time, our engineers estimated the additional wells at roughly $7 million. But you are correct, that's not part of your prepayment. That's 20 years from now, whenever you think you may need the additional water. So right now, again, the well capacity does not include the 17 million gallons. The next page then Reserve capacity of the 5 members equals 16.3 million. That includes the 11 million from Sioux Falls, which again is less than the well capacity of 19 million gallons. Further, the estimated average startup capacity of the 5 members is 7.1 million gallons a day, with a maximum capacity during the summer of 10.4 million gallons a day. That's information that was provided to us by those 5 members. And the point I'm simply showing is we're going to have enough well capacity at the beginning to provide the needs of the water. Out of those averages, Sioux Falls' estimated average startup capacity is 5.5 million gallons a day with a maximum of 8 million gallons a day. Wells, of course, will be added after 2012 as more members are connected. So obviously, at some point, we're going to need to expand our capacity beyond the 19 million gallons a day. And then the last page, just a quick item of interest. I know from time to time people have asked how much Sioux Falls is paying for this project in relation to other members. And so what we did is, and this is just a very simple snapshot, is looked at how many accounts each member has, or some of the members who took additional capacity, just like Sioux Falls. We looked at how many accounts each member had divided by their total payment toward Lewis and Clark. Now, I want to stress this is in no way showing that tomorrow, the citizens of T are going to see a $2,500 increase per account. That's, of course, not what this is showing. This is just giving a snapshot idea of how much each of these 5 entities are paying toward Lewis and Clark. That is a quick update on the project. Yes, sir.
Troy, the $7 million that's estimated for the additional wells, is that today's price, or is that?
That was, I think, last year's, and so that has not been updated. So that $7 million, I would stress, is very rough, very rough.
And probably low.
Right, because that came about at the time we were talking about all the bonding, so that's at least a year old, wouldn't you say, Kevin, if not longer? Okay. I would say it's at least a year old, at least a year since we've had that conversation.
Councilor Costello.
Troy, in that last chart that gives the per account value, what's the usefulness? What am I supposed to glean from that? Because at first blush, it just looks like Sioux Falls is paying less than most everybody else, but really that's not accurate. It really is relevant to how much water Sioux Falls gets on its own and how much it needs. So what am I missing here? What usefulness does this?
You're absolutely right. For example, Beersford is a sole source, will be going sole source Lewis and Clark, and Sioux Falls is not. And so this is not meant to show what is the cost of water per individual. All this is meant to show is, from time to time, I've been asked, what is Sioux Falls paying in relation to other members, or what are other members paying in relation to Sioux Falls? This is just to give you a snapshot of it.
I certainly hope you give it that full, detailed explanation, because on the blush of an eye, that could really skew somebody's opinion on that.
Sure. And this is not, and that's why I want to say this is in no way attempt to look at the total cost of water for any member entity at all.
Councilor Jamieson?
You indicated Beersford was the sole supply will be Lewis and Clark. How about
Right.
T?
That is their goal. Now, whether they've reserved enough from Lewis and Clark in the long run is unknown at this time. And that's
It might be helpful, along with what Pat was
Sure.
talking about, to have those identified that
Sure.
are solely dependent on Lewis and Clark
Sure.
compared to some of us that have a blended system.
Sure.
So,
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, from time to time, people ask me or tell me that we're taking too much water out of the Missouri River. Is there any way that I can tell them, we're taking out a very, very small amount, any percentage or any?
Sure. The
Yeah.
best statistic I have
Okay.
is based on the daily flow, the
Okay.
average daily flow of the Missouri. Lewis and Clark's 45 million gallons represents less than 0.3% of 1% of that average daily flow. Less than 0.3% of 1%. So it's a very small amount. Obviously, a point they may make in return is if you have enough Lewis and Clark type of projects, pretty soon that adds up to real water. Billion here, billion there, right?
Councilor Liz?
Thanks, Troy. I had a question that may be better answered by Mr. Hayek. I was wondering about where our bonding was at this point here, if we could just get a brief overview. Or maybe you could do it, Troy, I don't know.
Where Sioux Falls is bonding?
Yes,
is that?
exactly. Are all the bonds let out? Where are we at, Doug?
Well, I didn't serve as bond counsel on that,
Oh, I thought you were. My mistake, my bad.
but the bonds were issued, and under the prepayment agreement that the city has, there are payments, the prepayment of roughly, is it $64 million is paid in over 3 times. First payment, well, there was one payment that was made already, the $20 million, a little over $20 million. Another payment is due, I think, May 1st of this year, and then the final payment is May 1st of 2009. So, yes, Troy could have answered these questions.
Very good.
But the bonds have been issued.
That was my main question.
Councilor Jameson?
Sorry, I thought it was
Okay, here.
related to Sioux Falls specifically. I'm sorry about that.
Following up on Kermit's question, what were the water rights that were issued to Sioux Falls when the Lewis and Clark and all that, not Lewis and Clark, but the river dam system was built? What were the water rights for Sioux Falls? And maybe Kevin is the one that can answer that.
Good afternoon, Kevin Smith with the Office of Public Works. Prior to Lewis and Clark, the city obtained, I believe it was 40,000 acre-feet per year in future use of the Missouri River. So in addition to the water rights that Lewis and Clark has in their own name, the city of Sioux Falls has additional water rights that could go beyond, I think it's between 28 and 30 million gallons per day, should we ever choose to exercise those. And those are, as I understand, water rights in South Dakota. It's first in time, first in right, and ours go back to the 1970s.
Okay, thank you.
So we have retained those.
Councilor Costello?
Troy, I'd like to go back to the wells. How many total wells are there going to be when it's all built out?
We estimate 17 to 19 wells.
And 6 are in right now?
7.
7. And the Sioux Falls is deferring how many wells?
Whatever it would take to produce 17 million
Okay.
gallons. It's not an exact science. You don't know until you drill it how much it'll produce.
Are we thinking about deferring capacity in the treatment plant based on that same logic of the wells?
When Phase 2 is completed, which again will allow us to deliver treated water, we anticipate we would have the infrastructure to deliver 30 million gallons a day. We would need to add wells to our 19 million gallons to get up to the 30. Later, we would add both infrastructure and wells as needed to get to the 45 million gallons. And obviously Sioux Falls plays a key role in how we add to that 30.
And so are we, when we get to those end gallons of water, is Sioux Falls responsible for paying for that? And that's not within our bond amount?
Just for the wells, the infrastructure is part of your prepayment.
Okay. Good.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Troy, all the wells that we have right now, they're horizontal wells, aren't they?
We have 4 that are angle wells and 3 that are vertical.
Also, no horizontal. Rainy wells?
That will be the next one. The Rainy Collector well
Yes.
is the next large one that we'll be putting in after 2012, and that will be by far our biggest well. And Jim, do you recall what they're estimating that'll produce, the collector well? I forget right offhand.
It was easily 2 or 3 million gallons a day.
I thought it was much higher than that, because that's the Rainy Collector well. I don't have a number. I just know that's going to be by far our biggest.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a fairly high number, but I don't have that number.
Would there be any other questions for Mr. Larson?
Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate
Thank
the group of people you brought with you today also to be here for this presentation. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And let's see, a couple just quick things that I forgot to mention earlier. One, just want you to know that we have received notice from the mayor that he will be presenting the annual State of the City address on March 27th. So I'd like to encourage those of you who are listening to attend in person that day. That is, again, the annual address to review the to share the mayor's vision with all of us and provide some direction on where the city is heading next. And wow, what a great city, I must say. And then, Councilor Costello, I was wondering if you'd want to share the legislative update that you mentioned to me when I came in today on the rather timely topic of alcohol licenses in our city.
We just, all of us got an email that Dee's husband has deferred the Senate Bill 1126, which is a liquor law bill, till Wednesday. So it sounds like there'll be a reconsideration of that bill on Wednesday and not today. No explanation was offered by Mr. Knudsen.
I'm sorry, but I can't help you. You know more than I do. I don't talk to him much for months at a time right now. Would there be any thing else? We are going to go into executive session, and the exception is consulting with legal counsel. But do you have anything else for the group before I get a motion to go into executive session? Yes, Councilor Costello.
I'm kind of naive, still naive, and after almost 2 years on the council here. But if we wanted to add an item to executive session, is that possible, Gail, to talk about some of the things that are going on with Lewis and Clark? Is that considered a contract or proprietary thing, or?
Well, I think there might be a little more information than that.
Well, I would just like to hear a little bit more from some of our city representatives regarding our position in this whole thing.
Well, if it falls under contract negotiations, it would. And I don't know, Greg, if Greg has any other input on that, but it has to fall under like litigation, contract negotiations, personnel matters. Those are the statutory exceptions to being in.
I mean, I would say it would be the ongoing discussion on the water treatment plant and our position on that. So I don't know if that's a contract or not.
Mr. Greenfield, would you have anything to say on that question for Councilor Costello? Again, do you want to come to the podium, please? And I'm sorry to kind of put you on the spot here.
Out of fairness, I think we could talk about the amended and restated commitment agreement and amendments there too.
Excuse me, would you just introduce yourself for the listening
I'm Greg
public?
Greenfield. I'm an attorney at Boyce Greenfield, Pashby, and Welk, and I've been representing the city in regards to Lewis and Clark Rural Water System. I think that if we limited our discussion to the amended and restated commitment agreement and amendments thereto, we could speak about that in executive session, but for the broader type of questions that you want to act, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that in executive session.
Councilor Brown.
I, for one, am not comfortable doing it today. I think we need to be more prepared. If we have specific contract issues that we need to discuss, I think we can schedule that at a time in the future. But obviously, the attorneys aren't prepared, and we don't have a specific issue to deal with. I would discourage us doing that.
I think we're prepared. I'm just not sure that it fits within the exception for the executive session.
Okay. Councilor Costello, would you have any other questions you would like to ask publicly right now on this topic?
No.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else have any other input? Okay. Again, the reason we are going into executive session in a few moments is regarding consulting with legal counsel. It's our technical and very appropriate exception why we are not doing this in open discussion. And I would like a motion, please, to go into executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session at this time.
Okay, Councilor Litz, thank you. And may I have a second to that motion?
Second, Jameson.
Councilor Jameson has seconded that motion. All in favor of the motion to go into executive session to consult with legal counsel, yes?
Yes.
Yes? Anyone, no? Okay, we will go into executive session, and